Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Public Policy Podcast, where we dissect public policies to uncover what works, what doesn't, and why. I'm your host, Adnan, and today we will go to Medellin, Colombia, and see how local leadership can drive a significant change to tackle development challenges. So, if you never visited Colombia before, you probably heard of Medellin from the drug cartel movies and TV series such as Narcos. Now, let's take you back to the early 1980s when the drug trade just exploded and the Medellin cartel grew bigger and more powerful, led, of course, by the infamous Pablo Escobar. The cartel recruited kids assassins, bought off politicians, even infiltrated the National Congress for some time to influence policies. That's how crazy the situation was. By the mid 90s, Medellin had the highest homicide rate in the world, like nearly 400 deaths per 100,000 people. And when the cartel finally collapsed, things didn't magically get better. Paramilitaries and guerrillas and local gangs just filled up the power vacuum. And the violence, of course, kept going, especially in the poor neighborhoods up in the hills, such as Comuna 13 or Commune 13. This phenomenon was especially aggravated by the growing number of newcomers, Venezuelanos escaping the violence and natural events, and seeking refuge in Medellin, among other places across Latin American countries. Now I would like you to hear about a random person here, Pedro Mendoza. Imagine it is 1994, you are in the shoes of Pedro Mendoza, who owns a mini factory making socks, and your products are exported to Walmart, Target, and some other retail and department stores in North America. Your little factory of 120 workers is doing okay as a business. You are providing for your family of four, but you see a lot of money going as protection fees from your pocket to the local gang members, and the fear makes you in a constant dilemma. If you pay taxes to the government, you and your workers will benefit from Social Security, access to banking services, and more business opportunities, of course. But at the same time, paying taxes makes you seen as a traitor and as a government spy in the community. And the neighborhood becomes riskier to live for your family, for yourself. So, what would you do? Around the same time, Colombia was trying to decentralize and give more power to local governments. But to be honest, it just made things even more of a mess. Before, mayors were appointed and unaccountable. After decentralization, you got elected mayors, but they were mostly party bosses and super clientelists. And they would just blame the national government for everything. And of course, the everlaying or like the everlasting blame is the lack of funding to the local stuff. Of course, this mix of violence, corruption, and city government that was not really working for its people. Enter Sergio Fajardo. He's this guy from one of Medellin's wealthiest families, but he's walking around in jeans, no ties, talking to people in the poorest neighborhoods. So he runs for mayor 1999 as a independent person with no traditional party backing, and this situation was too unheard of, too unique, too innovative, let's say. So he loses that first time. He doesn't give up. And in 2003, he runs again, promising to fight corruption and restore the city's dignity. And this time, he wins by a landslide. People were just fed up with the old way of doing things. And Fajardo, he managed to cross those social divides in a rare and unique combo. He was relatable to the poor, but the business elite also saw him as one of their own. But even with all that momentum, the challenges were huge. The city council was packed with old school politicians, and Fajardo had only one ally out of the 21 city council members. People were saying to him, the council is going to swallow you without even chewing. And honestly, I might have thought the same if I was there, but let's see how he tackled it. Fajardo comes in and his first move is to break those patronage networks. He doesn't owe anyone any political favors because he didn't make deals to get elected, which is a big deal. He gained his freedom and independence. He builds his team from this initial group of 50 experts from different backgrounds, not just politicians, but also professors, businessmen and women, and NGO leaders, union experts. He's looking for honesty, knowledge, passion, social sensibility, and basic human decency. Not your usual politician, right? But the real test is the city council. These guys are used to trading votes for jobs and contracts. Fajardo keeps the conversation at a bigger level. So, talking about education reform or public transportation investments, not the details where the deals are made. And he treats all the council members equally, no matter their party. He even lets them take credit for good ideas. And I found this very kind of genius because he plays and manipulates people through their ego, let's say. So Fajardo was super transparent, always communicating. He's on local TV every Thursday, walking the streets, talking to the people in the neighborhoods. Some of these neighborhoods where no mayor had ever been before. So he's honest about setbacks, and he's all about quick and visible wins. Like basically, for example, Mother's Day was usually one of the most violent days of the year, but his administration runs a campaign and cuts the homicide rate by 40% that day throughout the years. They celebrate every little victory just to show people that change is possible. And then there's the participatory planning activities, these civic pacts. The city makes agreements with local communities before starting a project. The community gets a say, signs the pact, and then the city publicizes it everywhere. It's about ownership and accountability. People start to feel like the government is actually theirs, not just something that happens to them. And before we continue, it is important to mention that one of the main things that happened right before Fajardo's election was Operation Orion, which targeted Comuna 13, or it was called the dump, or like in Spanish, La Escombrera. And Comuna 13 was in the uphills of Medellin, and this Operation Orion was ordered by the Colombian president at the time, Alvaro Uribe, with backing from the US and the general effort to lower violence and dismantle cartels. Fajardo came in and started building on clean ground, especially by focusing on public transportation. He was behind two main infrastructure investments that blew the world. The first being the cable car to allow people to go up and down the hill, making the neighborhood safe and easy to navigate, which allowed for more girls to go to school and more women to actually join the workforce, and more control over street crime, of course. The cable car became a tourist attraction. How unexpected. The other thing was leveraging connections within the national government to get support in building cyberparks to foster innovation and entrepreneurship, in addition to public libraries equipped with the latest computers and good internet. The idea was to have the most beautiful buildings within the poor neighborhoods so that people feel seen and valued. This allowed also to bridge the gap between the different social classes of Medellin. So how do you keep that momentum going? For Fajardo, the answer was education. He made it the flagship. Medellin, la más educada, the most educated. But not everyone was on board at first. The teachers' union was suspicious, worried about layoffs, but instead of fighting them, Fajardo listens. He finds out teachers are getting paid late because of bureaucratic delays. He fixes that and sets aside money from, of course, the city council so that they always get paid on time. That builds trust. He treats teachers with dignity, celebrates their successes, and brings them into the process. And there's even a bigger annual gala for teachers, and becomes like the event of the year. He also uses those civic pacts again, this time for schools and education, called quality pacts, signed by the mayor, teachers, students, and parents. The city renovates schools. The teachers and students commit to doing their best, and the parents help with oversight. And the results? In 4 years, the percentage of students performing below average on national tests drops from 65% to just over 11%. Above average scores jump from 6% to 37%. That's not just numbers, that's lives changed. Imagine how proud are those parents who invested a lot in their kids. Transparency goes even further. Fajardo's administration puts up signs at every public works site saying, "Here are your taxes at work." They publish all contracting info online, hold public fairs for city contracts, and make it easier for anyone to see where the money is going. Tax morale goes up, more people start paying taxes because they actually believe the money is being used for their public good. So that's a huge shift in trust, and it actually works. Of course, everything here we say was a theory, and then it was implemented with a lot of patience, I guess. And but nothing is easy, of course. So, was everything perfect? Of course not. Some problems persist, like corruption in the police, and after Fajardo left, violence did actually spike again. But the big legacy, restoring public trust, showing that the government can work for its people, and proving that even in the toughest environments, you can build partnerships that last. You know, this whole civic pact thing reminds me of a project I worked on before in my home country. Totally different scale, but same idea. We brought together local business owners, residents, and city officials to clean up a beach. Everyone signed on, everyone had a role, and suddenly people started taking pride in the space. It's not magic, but it's powerful. So, Medellin's turnaround under Fajardo, it's not just about one leader, it's about changing the rules, building trust, and making people feel like they belong. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. You can also join our newsletter for additional resources, updates, and exclusive content. Until next time, stay informed, stay inspired, and keep exploring. This episode was produced at L Station with help from Nicholas Stuva. L Station is a partnership between L Space Social Innovation Hub and XI Talents.